Ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to Black and Blurred.
Hi,
That's Darren.
it's me.
I'm Brandon. I sound like a rapper right now because my allergies have been killing me. And it always happens when the weather is fluctuating. It's like 60 degrees, 40 degrees, 80 degrees.
That's Maryland. That's Maryland.
And so whatever. But ladies and gentlemen, we are here with a fire episode.
Yeah.
We have a sister with us, Constance, the writer and author and founder of Truth and Fire. If you are a fan of the American Gospel segments, I think it's Christ Alone and Christ Crucified. And there's another one coming out soon. You've seen her, and maybe you're familiar with her work. If you are not familiar with her work right now, go look up Truth and Fire. And before you hear too much from me about it, I'm going to introduce her. Constance, it's good to have you on Black and Blurred.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
So literally right now, as we were about to hit record, we just found out that Constance is like down the street from us.
Yeah.
Which is,
That's wild.
I'm sitting here planning this episode. I'm talking and corresponding with whoever, Megan, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm like telling her like, hey, yeah, we're on Eastern Standard Time. And just make sure I don't know where she, whatever. And then you're like, hey, where are you guys? And we're like, we're in PG. You're like, oh, I'm in Montgomery County.
Yep.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's quite possible that part 2 is going to be coming, and it's going to be coming after we all have some dinner together.
Yeah.
She, her husband, and me and my wife, and Darren and his wife. So, Constance, welcome. We are fighting the same battle, not just as brothers and sisters of Christ, but then it feels like we're on kind of similar posts in the way that we and the things that we fight against. So, tell the people a little bit about yourself and your blog, Truth and Fire, and how that started, how you got started into that, and what, tell them a little bit about that.
Yeah. I started Truth and Fire in 2015, June of 2015. Ironically, I had gotten the idea for it in December of 2014. I sat on it for a while because I had gone through this whole, and I kind of shared my testimony in American Gospel. I had gone through this decade of anger or whatever with God because I had gone through some things I didn't agree with. And then, so around 2014, I was forgiving God. Like just saying that, like, I was like, Lord, but that's where I was at mentally. I'm like, okay, I guess we could be friends again. Okay. And so I got the idea to do the blog. I actually had a magazine back in the day called The Call. And that was kind of related to what I had gone through. And so I didn't want to write anymore about faith because I was just so disillusioned. But I started to feel better. Things were on the up and up for me again. So I felt like I can write again. But I didn't want to write anything without really knowing what the Bible said. So I started to read the Bible for myself. And got involved in this ministry at my church. I was going to First Baptist Church of Glen Arden at the time, actually.
Oh wow.
At John Jenkins' church. I was going there, and what was I trying to say? Yeah, so I was going there, and they had a women's discipleship group, and I joined that group. I didn't think I needed it because I was reading the Bible. I had the blog, and so I probably was writing for Truth and Fire for about 6 months. I don't think I was born again at the time. I really don't. I really don't. I don't think I was, but I was writing about basic things. Like I think Bruce Jenner had come out as Caitlyn, and some other things were going on. And so I was writing really basic things, like things we all know as Christians that, we should forgive people. A man can't be a woman, like basic stuff. So thankfully I didn't get into the weeds of theology where I ended up saying anything false.
Yeah.
But
there's grace even if you did.
Grace, oh my gosh. So 6 months into doing Truth and Fire, I get converted, and I'm like, what? So my writing just totally changes. I started getting more theologically dense and all that. So yeah, it officially started in June of 2015, but I would say probably by January or February of 2016, that's when things got a little bit deeper. Was writing for a little while. And began to, because I wanted to start. I was one of those people that had a lot of zeal but no knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And so once I'm starting to get all this knowledge, and I'm so excited about what I'm learning from the Bible, and then I'm beginning to realize that John Jenkins wasn't safe to sit under. I'm just saying.
Don't worry, I'm gonna poke at it a little bit.
So I began to realize that. I began to realize that T.D. Jakes was a false teacher. Joel Osteen was a false teacher.
And you were listening to all of these at the time?
Well, actually, I was not listening to either of them at the time.
But they were just not on the radar, really.
They weren't on my radar at that point, but I used to listen to them heavy, probably around 2014 and back. But around 2014 is when I was kind of going through that I need to really know what the Bible says kind of thing. And so I started to read it, and then I really got into it, and I started the blog. But my reading the Bible more really didn't have anything to do with my not listening to T.D. Jakes or Joel Osteen. It was more of like a time, like I didn't really have the time that I used to have. But when I realized they were false teachers, I probably realized they were false teachers around sometime in 2016. Because I remember in January 2016, I was still attending FBCG, and T.D. Jakes was preaching at the revival, whatever they do this annual revival service in January. And he said to write a check for $2,016, $216, $20.16 or whatever. And I was like, $20.
Oh man.
So I wrote my check. So I know at that point, I don't think I was converted quite yet, but I think right after that I got converted, because I was still under the foolery at the time, because I wrote the check in January 2016, but I wrote it for $20.16. And he had prophesied, quote unquote, that it was my year, as they always say. It was my year, and my business was going to take off and all of this. And when I tell you that same year, my business started going through craziness and all that other stuff. Money got crazy. So it was a lot. But yeah, about a year later, so I wrote about T.D. Jakes in 2017, because it's, between that time and 2017, I was beginning to realize who all these false teachers were. And all these people I had given so much credence and and respected so much were like proven to be false teachers. I started to write about it. And so for a while, people began to peg Truth and Fire as a discernment blog, or a heresy hunt, calling me a heresy hunter and things like that. And I'm like, I was just coming into like realizing that these people were like, oh my gosh. So I'm the type. By day I'm a teacher, so I just tend to like to share what I learn, not as far as a gossip, but but when I get information that is helpful for me, I like to share it with people. So
can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah, I'm not,
because I was just thinking about this.
What's that?
People's disdain for Christians sharing what's true.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Let me change that.
Yeah.
Professing Christians disdain for Christians sharing what's true.
Yeah.
Do we lack sharing the truth that much that when a Christian does it, they're like,
they don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it looks like.
And it's like, why would the benefit of the doubt be given towards you're just this bitter Betty in her room wanting to hunt people down and tear them down, rather than saying, I want brothers and sisters to flourish in the knowledge of the Lord and grow to a mature stature that confirms their calling. And this person is driving you the opposite direction from that.
Yeah. So that's the heart I had. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I got to tell everybody. And so that's what I was doing at the time. And so that's how I ended up getting in contact with Brandon from American Gospel. He reached out, and then, I had no idea what the project was about. It was just another way to just warn people like, oh my gosh, he's a false teacher. I thank God that I was clueless. I didn't know really who John MacArthur was at the time. I didn't really know who Paul. I didn't know who these people were. I didn't even know what Reformed anything was.
So
I just got involved, and I just wanted to share. I didn't know who was in it. I just like, yeah, sure, I'll share my testimony. No problem. And then got the opportunity to do that, and the rest is history. I think between American Gospel and a piece I wrote on Lecrae that same year in 2017, those were the two things that kind of like spiraled with
took it off.
And then that's it.
Man, the Lord working through adversity, through humbling, right? Breaking. Breaking. I mean, so apparently that was your breakthrough. Your breakthrough came, huh?
Right.
Through being broken.
Yeah, the same day I was recording my interview for American Gospel, my house was being sold on the PG County courthouse steps that
Wow.
same day. So I'm genuinely crying in that documentary about the goodness of the Lord, but it was just looking at like I'm going through this and this isn't even breaking me. It's not bothering
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
so
yeah.
at peace. I will come home every day, because I don't know if anyone's ever been through foreclosure, but it is not fun.
Mm,
And they put these little notes on your door every day and
mm,
just letting everybody know your business. And I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
and I remember thinking like, well, I got a mansion in heaven. It's fine.
Mm,
By the great, like it was totally the grace of God that I went through that. But I remember the exact date, but my house was sold on the courthouse steps, and Brandon reached out and he had gotten me a ticket to G3. I didn't know what G3 was. Had flown down to Atlanta.
mm-hmm.
I'm from for this. That's where I'm from, so it was no big deal to go down there. But flown down to Atlanta, did my interview, and at that same time they were selling my house. So I was just like, Lord. So definitely a humbling experience, and so but I'm grateful. God has been real good,
Yeah.
in spite of all that. So
When I hear you talk about that, and I hear you talk about some of the promises of following Christ, that type of those trials and that type of suffering. Meanwhile, every human being is going to suffer. That's just a part of being human.
yeah.
But this suffering that actually molds you to look more like Christ
Mhm.
is guaranteed to us for our good.
Right.
When you go through that, and then when you hear the chirpings of kind of, for lack of a better phrase, black church culture,
Mhm.
where every week all you're getting is a false promise of some superficial material thing.
Right.
How does that? How were you receiving that in that moment when you're all that stuff in the background is just this noise that you were used to? Meanwhile, this is what you're going through.
I think for me, by God's grace, by then I knew that stuff was a lie.
Mm,
But when I had gone through, so I've had two major financial issues, I guess you can say. Now I'm not bad with money. It's just I really think it was the Lord breaking me. Like I don't want people to be like, "Dang girl," But I mentioned that there was a time where I was angry with God, and
mhm,
so I had a magazine in the early 2000s called The Call, and I would gotten interviewed with by the Atlanta Journal Constitution, Rolling Out magazine. There was this channel down. I don't know how they were syndicated, but in Atlanta it was called UPN. Um, and so I had gotten an interview with them. And so I'm doing this little tour, this media tour. We put the magazine out during TD Jakes's, gosh, I forget the name of the conference. MegaFest. It was MegaFest.
huh.
And so that's how that magazine began to take off a little bit. So people in like Alabama, Tennessee, like the southern states knew about it. And so, I had my own office in downtown Atlanta. I was writing for a magazine in Atlanta at the time from this gentleman I met in college. He was the publisher of it. I don't know if he still publishes it or not, but so he had this office space in downtown Atlanta, offered me space. And I thought I was doing my thing, but again, zeal with no knowledge. So I was a professing
Hmm.
Christian, um, doing the moral stuff, doing all the good things. I had always been known to be a good girl, amongst people who knew me.
Mm.
The only missing piece was like, okay, now I'm going to finally give my life to God,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so I did that. I had the magazine, and things just were not going the way that they should have gone. I was a member of Eddie Long's church at the time.
Oh wow. You made your
Yeah,
rounds.
you've been through it. You've been through it.
So yeah, I was a member of his church, and I remember that one Sunday he goes, God told me to tell you, famous last words.
Hmm, hmm.
God told me to tell you that you can quit that job, and I was like, yes, because I've been doing this magazine and it's taking off. I literally I was working at a law office, and I had my own office. And I was doing interviews with T.I., Mary. Like I was like talking to people from work, and I felt bad about it. So I was like,
Mm,
God, I don't want to be dishonest by doing stuff for this magazine on company time. So it's time for me to move on. So I quit the job. And I had probably like $3,000 to my name. I was like 23 or something like
mm,
that.
mm.
So I quit that job. And so that's how that happened. And so I felt like because of everything that Eddie Long preached about, prosperity and success and all of that, and I was doing it for God. Even the the interview I did with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I think I said something like that in the interview. I'm doing this for God and whatever. It's weird craziness.
Yeah.
And so so I was angry with God or at God once, unfairly, and I know that of course now, but because everything that I was being taught from Eddie Long, was that because I was doing something for God, everything should be smooth. I shouldn't have to go through anything crazy. But rent was still due, car note was still due, things were still coming up, and I'm like, what what do they say? These bills ain't billing. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
The money wasn't money, and it wasn't coming through as fast as I felt like it should. And so, I just fell on hard times, and I was really upset, and just angry with God. So I thought it was hilarious that fast forward to around 2016, I'm doing much better. I'm in DC. I have my own home. Of course, I'm still under the guise of this prosperity gospel. So I felt like because I was doing so well, that meant that God loved me again. A jacked up,
Yeah.
jacked up theology, but or doctrine, I should say. And so that's why I was at a place where I was like, okay, God, I forgive you. So I felt better about going back to the Bible and all of that. I was still going to church and everything at the time. I was attending before I went to FBCG, I was attending a church in Alexandria, Virginia. Forget the name of it, with you guys may know who this is. Oh gosh, what's his name? It's off Duke Street. I don't know if you guys know.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Howard John Wesley.
Howard Johnson. Wesley.
Howard John Wesley.
Yeah.
I was attending his church for a little while, and then when I moved over to Maryland, I ended up joining FBCG. But anyway, so by the time I got to the point of my foreclosure, by that point I was saved. I knew the gospel and all of that. And I was, of course, still, hoping that I didn't have to actually go through with it. But the way the Lord was, providentially working, and everything that I knew, because, in the world, I thought, I could have whatever job I wanted. I was very ambitious. Everything was about my legacy, about my good name. I was all about that. This boss chick kind of mentality. I was all about that. Especially coming from Atlanta. No knock to my sisters in Atlanta, but that tends to be a mindset, like,
that is in Baltimore too.
Independent boss chick,
Yeah.
And so I had that mentality as well. So when I got my house, I was like, y'all can tell me nothing. I'm a homeowner.
Right.
So, by the time I was converted, I knew all that stuff didn't matter. So I thought it was hilarious that the timing worked out where no matter what I did, my contracts kept falling through. Like I would be a subcontractor for someone else, and that contractor would lose the contract over some small technical. It was just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And so no matter what anything I tried to do, being this boss chick that I thought I was back in the day, I always tried to manipulate, my circumstances, control my circumstances. I thought that was taking charge, but it's just me doing things in my own strength. And none of that stuff was working.
Yeah.
By the time I got, through that process, I literally just like, Lord, everything I'm trying is just not working. And so that house been gone, stayed gone, then come back. And, and I can talk about it freely because I know, I mean, it's not embarrassing to me, because I'm just like, child, live another day, you'll see something. It may not be foreclosure, it might be divorce. If it's not divorce, it'd be that. And I don't want, especially now that I'm married, I don't wish that on anybody. But I'm saying, like, the Lord has a way of humbling all of us in some way,
That's right.
So, but through that experience, I had a lot of joy. I had a lot of peace. And I know that was the Lord. And I'm thankful that at that point I was saved, because when I had a false understanding of the Lord, when I went through everything after leaving my job in the early 2000s, I got angry at God because I felt like he owed me something. And then this time around, I'm like, well, the Lord is my provider, so he will take care of me. But I didn't feel like I wasn't presumptuous, and I wasn't prideful or just assuming upon the grace of God. It's just, I just believe the truth about him, and things work themselves out. So I don't know, it's just interesting. Things worked out.
I had the pleasure of leaving Baltimore for ministry in Silver Spring. in 2013.
Yeah, it was running.
Yeah, 2013. And so after a certain amount of time, there was something I realized just being a part of those circles, and from a church planning perspective, and I think it's Acts 29 circles and pastors and things like that. And then also having our background and coming from a small church in Baltimore City, it's like one thing that hurts my heart is all the different distinctions that are highlighted in Black church and white church. I hate those phrases, first of all, because it's the church. The church right now is diverse, and it's made up of even more people than Black and white.
That's right.
But if there are going to be some distinctions to highlight, I always wanted to highlight the beauty of those different spaces and how they can feed off of one another. An example is that the culture we came from was a culture when it's healthy, that has a very healthy reverence for God, a recognition of his holiness and his righteousness. And that approach is very humble and it's awe-stricken, right? And I feel like when we get into more white evangelical spaces, it becomes more casual. And so worship is affected in a certain way. This is a very general, big generalization. But in the other way, I would say theology in a lot of white evangelical spaces in this country is rich. It's very rich.
Yeah.
And we don't benefit off of those things by learning from being with one of the, and doing that. And so all of that to say, as you have been to the who's who and sat under the who's who of preachers and teachers, that kind of established you on this very thick false rug to be pulled out from under you. Why do you think so many young Black Americans draw towards like a T.D. Jakes or Howard John Wesley or a, Creflo Dollar? What is that?
I have an idea, and I'm going to speak on it from my perspective as far as what I was thinking at the time that I was joining these churches. I didn't grow up in the church, so I had no idea what church was supposed to look like. I'd seen, I probably had gone to church maybe 3 or 4 times. I don't know. I don't remember. Maybe it was for a funeral. I don't know. But there was always like a sweaty person breathing into the microphone really hard and all of that. So that's all I knew. And I knew the collection plate was coming around. But our family was, low/moderate income. We didn't, how do people go low to moderate income? We were low income, probably below low income. And so when you grow up in an environment, and while again, I don't know if that's necessarily the case for a lot of African Americans today, in the 80s and maybe coming up in the 90s, what I saw, that was the norm, where everyone was pretty much low income in the hood, quote unquote. And so I always thought that God hated me. And I hated the fact that every time I turned around, we had to figure out how we were going to, eat, where we were going to live, we were going to have Christmas or not. Like, that was just frustrating, right? So when you become old enough to do something about it, and you get to a church where they're saying to you that God loves you, which is true, right? They're taking this grain of truth, and then they start piling all these other things on about success and wealth and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, like, okay, so God does love me. So all I got to do is just do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. So I was drawn to it because, very humble beginnings, humble means and things like that. A lot of, I don't want to say robbing Peter to pay Paul, but just a lot of finagling, if you will. My husband hates that word. A lot of, he's like, that's not what that word means. But I've heard so many people use it the same way. I'm like, in the South, we say finagling. We're trying to say make something work. It's finagling. Right. But anyway, I got tired of that. So when you're telling me that this version of Jesus is the pathway to get away from all of that, I'm with it. Let's go. Now, by God's grace, there was something in me. I know it was the Lord that put that in me, but there was something in me that wanted more. I didn't know exactly what that was, but I knew, because I knew I didn't know who Jesus actually was. But the prosperity gospel got to me because it was just the antithesis of everything I knew growing up And I didn't necessarily see it as a racial thing. I saw it as more of as a socioeconomic thing.
That's possible. Yeah, I think that's connected.
Yeah, and I know for some people, those things go hand in hand, race and socioeconomics. But for me, it was just more like, I'm tired of being broke. I'm tired of being dejected and poor. And prosperity preachers talk about that. Like, if you broke, busted, and disgusted, it's a sin. So I'm like, oh,
they prey on them.
Yeah, so they pray. So I think that the reason that you might find more young Black people caught up in that is they've probably come from environments where they don't see the love of God, the true love of God being on display, or knowing that God or someone else loves them, because you're thinking about individuals who are coming from broken homes. Usually they're with their mothers, and yeah, of course, your mom loves you, but she has to be your mother and your father, so she's going to be a little bit tougher on you, and probably less nurturing. She's not probably going to be as present, so you're not getting that love that you need. So you go to these churches and they tell you that God loves you, and that's true. And then they go, and then Jesus died. Now, one thing they did tell me at Eddie Long's church is that Jesus died for my sins. They said that. But what they did was they said he died for my sin of being broke. My sin of being poor, my sin of being depressed, my sin of, all of that. So they took that.
That's a new one.
Yeah, So prosperity preachers, they make being poor or low income a sin. And so if you, Jesus died for my sins, so that's why you hear people talking about I claim it, and that's and they start claiming houses and cars and all of that, because they need to come out of that sin of being without. And it's a mess. And so, and then the gag of it all is that you come in broke, but then they tell you that you got to give them $500.
Give them some money. Yeah. Well, I ain't got it, bro.
So I
remember
when I came in,
right?
Like, so that's what drew me. And then you get to these churches, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the church being beautiful and well put together.
Yeah.
But you had these churches where a lot of money was going toward upkeep and maintenance. So you get to the palatial looking building, and everything's new, and you have these well-dressed, individuals in the pulpit. So you're like, I'm trying to do that, and it's very sick. So I think they take advantage of this. Of course, I don't know if someone said this. Well, someone said this, but I can't remember who it was, about the prosperity gospel offers you everything that Satan offered Jesus in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And it's basically that. So it feeds into this. Some of it is a legitimate need. Of course, we need to eat. We need to have a place to stay. Blah blah. But it feeds into that sin of feeling like we need to have that rich young ruler mentality of having all these things.
Right.
And so when you kind of, again, grow up without, or grow up in an environment where you see a lot of people without, and then you go into an environment where you see all these Black people looking like they're doing the dang on thing. I remember Eddie Long would be in the pulpit glistening, like literally glistening, like his hair,
the cocoa butter, man.
His hair was glistening because he probably from the S curl or the activator. I don't know. The skin was glistening. Of course, he had on the jewelry.
Yeah.
The muscle shirts. I was like, bro.
But
he was fit. So he had all these things. This vision of looking healthy and wealthy. And you're coming from an environment where everybody's sick. Everybody got diabetes. Everybody got blood pressure. So they take all of that. And I'll never forget. There was a sermon once that Eddie Long gave us. He was talking about health, and he literally told us how he goes to the bathroom and what it looks like.
Perfect.
And I wrote it down.
Perfect.
I wrote it down because I'm like, I'm trying to be healthy,
Yeah, right.
It was.
She said, I wrote it down.
I was like, it's supposed to be what color? Okay,
bro.
And
my goodness.
Like that stuff is like insane, but I think that's part of it. Again, I can't speak for the whole, but I think as far as African Americans go, namely those of us who grew up in low to moderate income environments, I think part of that is the draw. Now, I know that ultimately, biblically speaking, people want their ears tickled.
Yeah, right.
But I do think that there can be some genuine believers. There are some genuine believers amongst all of that, because the Lord pulled me out of that.
That's right.
Because of that, I know that there's people there who may have been drawn to it because of, sincerely not having much growing up, but when they hear the actual gospel, they'll come.
Well, they're looking to be discipled.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you end up with gang members, right? It's you get the young guys who don't have dreams of being a gang member. They're looking for a father.
They're looking. Yep. So there's a core need that, Satan will send his minions out to try to fulfill, but it's being fulfilled in a, of course, perverted way. Whatever the perversion looks like, it doesn't always have to be a sexual thing or anything like that.
Right.
Be a perverted gospel. You know what I mean? So.
And I think that there are people who don't recognize just how evil that is.
Yeah.
Because I think, in relationship to the American Gospel documentary, people's understanding of hell is very sterile or sanitized.
Sanitized, definitely, yeah.
It's sanitized. Even the concept of what it means to be separate from God for eternity. Every aspect of goodness and what that means to be separate from God for eternity, and how people are kept in that way. We all have made a choice. We are all rebels. We've all, like sheep, gone astray. But there are people who pave the way for people to continue down that path of rebellion through false teaching.
Yeah.
And it needs an alarm.
Yeah.
God has sent people to sound alarms.
And these are people who are coming to find the truth.
Yeah, right.
And they turn around and go, nah, go back to where you came.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Like, that's what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
As someone who is sitting there eating it up, you can say, oh no, I know what you're thinking. I know where you are. And I know what you're probably thinking about me right now. But I'm telling you, don't listen to the dude in the muscle shirts. Why would he be wearing those muscle shirts?
I have no idea. I really think it had something to do with fitness or something. I don't know, but it was very distracting, and not from like, ooh. I was just like, why you got that on? It looked like a leotard to me, like a because it was. I was like, how is this a snap? Like, what is going on? But
right. So it's wild that they're actually there. I mean, even in their mind, for the fact that I think that it's definitely intentional to be dressed up in the garb and, to be glistening, like you said. But I know that they're thinking that, hey, people are watching me and they're going to want to be like me. That lifted up out of itself is a biblical principle. That's a biblical principle for a shepherd to live in such a way because people are watching you. But we're to be imitators of Christ,
right?
So that they will be imitators of Christ as well. Right. Meanwhile, they're out there imitating, I don't know.
Yeah.
A different Jesus. I remember I just recently watched an American Gospel, and Creflo Dollar, they asked him, do you think Jesus would be driving around in a Maserati? Said, well, yeah, I think so. He rode on a donkey. No man did that before. That was his response.
Wow. Interesting.
I've never. What?
It's just, I don't know.
But that's the Jesus they think. You know what I mean? Whoever that guy is that they made up. You know.
Yeah. It's weird. I don't know how someone's mind, especially people like TD Jakes and Creflo, who I know I would overhear my paternal grandmother, listening to them in the 80s, or maybe I think in the 80s. And so again, I don't know what's what, but people say that back then they were solid. I don't know. But people say they were solid. So my whole thing is like, how do you know the truth and then intentionally, like, I don't know. I'm not even gonna try to. I don't want to know. But it's such a wicked, warped way to not only live but to influence other people.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll never understand it, but I just pray that those who are sitting under those individuals or individuals like them, because there's a new crop. I did a piece in 2018 dedicated to the new class of false teachers that are coming up. And of course, since then there's a new class every year, but so you got the Sarah I actually have on it's funny we're talking about false teachers. I have on my Joyce, Paula, Beth, whatever.
Oh man. Oh wait, stand up a little bit so that I can get in the camera.
It's a false teacher shirt. So it's just basically, I got in trouble for this shirt on
wow,
Instagram. people like, that's so unloving. I'm like, please.
Yeah, hey,
No,
Unloving.
it's
So,
loving.
that's loving.
So I have this shirt and I have one with TD Jakes and I think it's Todd White and
It's on your website, right?
Yeah. I can't remember who's all on there, but for some reason this thing is selling like hotcakes over in the West Coast. So whoever's over there,
snap!
Like the folks in the West Coast going in, but it's like they've been buying these shirts like crazy. But it's something but the new crop of false teachers with what's his name? TD Jakes' daughter, Sarah. People thought I was talking about Sarah Young, but I was talking about Sarah Jakes here. But hey, either same difference.
Yeah.
All false, all getting false revelations. But I gotta get some updated stuff for that because there's a new class. But I bring that up to say that it's interesting to have these people who have gone the way of perdition, if you will, for so long, and people are like, you gotta pray that they repent. And I'm not saying that they won't, but based on what 2 Peter 2 says,
I'm preaching on 2 Peter 1 this Sunday.
All right. So when you get to 2 Peter 2, it's gonna be. But I don't know. I just feel
that's
like
the whole point.
Yeah, I don't know what. I mean, I guess I know. Scripture tells us what it is. It's the filthy lucre. I can't say the word. Filthy lucre. I can't say the word. But it's that. So it's the money. It's the pride and all of that.
Yeah.
But it does a lot of damage to people. And
are you familiar? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just saying it does a lot of damage to people. And I pray that folks who just presume that those of us who are warning them about these people will come to understand that it's a loving thing. And I have had some people tell me that they go off on me in the comments and all in the public space, but then they want to email me. Like, okay, about 3 years ago, I thought you was crazy. I can't really put that out there so everybody can see it.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Like Paul, don't be
exactly right.
Get me out of here secretly.
I rebuked Peter to his face.
Right.
In front of everybody.
They go off on us in public in front of everybody.
That's exactly right.
Just want to say thank you, girl. I've been watching.
That's exactly how it be. That's the private message. Well,
so mean.
That actually, I did have a question I want to ask, but that is key. Like people will encourage you in private.
Yeah.
And though, like, let me not sound ungrateful. Mm-hmm. That encouragement is welcome.
It is. Mm-hmm. Praise the Lord.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much. But dog, we need voices out in these streets.
Yeah.
We need, do you have no idea the people? I mean, that's like the little sitcoms when there's a fight about to happen and somebody's like, I'm right behind you, bro. I'm right behind you. And they run in the other way. I'm right behind you. And it's like, what's going on?
It's like, okay. But yeah.
What do you think? Are you familiar with Jude 3?
A little bit. From what I've seen, I'm good. No,
well, in the very beginning, what I was searching for years ago was just a platform where people are providing apologetics in a context that a lot of Black Americans are familiar with. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, hey, I love classical apologetics and I'm trained in it, but I didn't have anybody talking about how do I talk about, these dudes who are my age to think they're Moors.
Yeah.
Or Black Hebrew Israelites, things like that, and engage in that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so in the very beginning, they were bringing people on to talk about that stuff, and it was great. But then it started morphing into this. Yeah. Well, this is before it even got woke. This is what broke the straw that broke the camel's back for me. There was a discussion with Carl Ellis, and a couple other people, and Howard John Wesley was a part of this discussion. Mm. And the question was asked if Jesus is the only way to salvation. Now, Carl Ellis and this other guy were fighting, saying, well, yeah, that's what the scripture says. That's what Jesus said. Mm-hmm. Yes. Howard Wesley and another woman were like, people, I will say that's true for me, but I'm not going to force that on people. And I'm like, bro.
I pastor. I'm going to tell you, church folk can be some of the most unchristlike folk I've ever met. And I've met some Muslims who I'd rather worship with any day of the week than some of the folk that sit in our sanctuary. So not to say that you were limiting to that, but I had to broaden it, which is what caused me to begin to wonder about my exclusive position that I was raised in.
Yeah,
What are you even doing right now?
Pastor Wesley's been doing that since I was attending his church probably around 2011, 2010, 2011, something like that. Gosh, I remember there was something on the referendum from Maryland. I wasn't living in Maryland at the time. It was for gay marriage. And he was trying to get the membership to support those who lived in Maryland. Because, in the DMV area, everybody, might live in one place and go to church somewhere else. But
True.
he was trying to get his Maryland membership to vote for it, saying that they didn't have a right to withhold that civil right from them. I was just like, bruh.
What?
Bruh. Yeah.
That's a big part of prosperity teachers is that it's their version of unity.
Yeah.
They can't be exclusive in anything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They have to include everybody.
It's not for me, but I don't condone it. But I'm just like, bruh.
Yeah, I know.
That's anybody who claims to be a herald of the gospel and teaches that forgets that they've been entrusted with that message.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The message of reconciliation is a message of reconciliation between a sinner and a righteous God.
God, yeah.
And you are withholding that message like the many parables, the one that buries the talent, the ones that show up to the banquet late. I mean, all of that. You don't see yourself in that story. And that's very frightening.
Yeah.
That's very frightening. And I was shocked. I didn't find out about Howard Wesley until I moved to this area. I didn't grow up like knowing about all of these types of guys.
Yeah.
But and so when I started listening to him, I would not immediately put him in the bag of like a TD Jakes type dude. But the more I listened to him, I'm like, I might put you in the bag of like a TD Jakes type dude.
Yeah. I haven't listened to him in years, but at the time that I was a member of his church, he was more of he was woke before woke was
real talk.
Yeah, so he was woke before then, because I remember I wasn't a member of his church at the time of the whole Trayvon Martin.
This is exactly what I'm thinking about.
I wasn't a member then, but I remember when he did the whole hoodie thing. And I wasn't converted yet, but I remember everyone giving him. He's the people's champ in the Black community because he does so much stuff. That's another draw too, because Eddie Long was good about this as well. They would do things for the Black community that people in the Black community would say they needed. So if they need Christmas gifts for the babies, they're going to make sure you have Christmas gifts. They're going to make sure people's rent is paid. They're going to make sure the single mom has a car. They're going to do these material things, which from a business standpoint or from a marketing standpoint, that's
phenomenal
and strategic, because now you got people like me defending him to people like, it's a false teacher. And I didn't know what people meant when they said it. I was just like, you just hate because he got money, and they were like, and I was like, and I was like, but he gave them some, why does he need, this kind of car? I was like, but he gave a single mom a car, blah, blah, blah. So they do those things to help us shut the mouths of those who would who would say something against them. Yeah. But the reality is he is a false teacher, and it just is what it is. But they will get you. They will be the ones that'll have a vaccine clinic at church while the church is closed. I don't know.
Oh,
they're not gonna have worship service, but they're gonna have people out in the parking lot.
Bars. Oh my goodness.
They're gonna have.
Oh my goodness. Let's drop bombs right now.
They're gonna do those things, and so they're gonna do all those practical things that seems good, that seems wise, and ultimately your whole soul, is about to just fry. But it's cool. You gotta.
I hated that so much when I was watching. I think we just talked about this in the last episode, but we were watching certain preachers and pastors kind of like with zeal, and I don't know. I don't even know. Just the audacity to speak so boldly about closing your church.
Yeah, right.
I know that there are pastors that made that decision in caring for their flock. I'm not ridiculing closing the church, although I do think it was harmful. I do think that's harmful. But, like we said at the beginning, God's grace is sufficient for us all. But the ones who were like, it's
only loving.
It's only loving to close your church.
It's loving.
And then like what you just said, but you still want to make sure the engagement and interaction is happening for the church's benefit. And so you're not there for the community's benefit. You're going to close down the lighthouse in this dark place, but you want to make sure that the funds are still coming at some type of way. There's a connection to make sure that the funds are still coming. I'm like, my goodness, I hate this. I hate it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of these people get their leg in with the racial conversations. You know, I heard after the whole George Floyd situation, I heard a lot of people challenging their pastors, especially in the reform circles, where you know, a lot of the pastors might be white, and so you have these, you know, I don't know if everyone was, you know, necessarily black, but you had these members going to their pastors demanding that, you know, they speak on the issue of the day.
Right.
And the pastor, you know, probably declining to do so, but just, you know, because they may be doing they may be going through scripture. What am I trying to say? What's the teaching style? Exegetical teaching. Thank you. And as opposed to topical, and so they may be doing that, and so then they'll leave the church. Oh, you don't care about black people because you're not talking about this, and so you have that type of stuff going on. And so I see a lot of. I saw this with Truth's Table. I don't rock with them. Okay,
I'm not familiar with Truth's Table.
I don't look it up. Then don't look again. I don't rock with them. I don't rock with y'all.
Truth's Table.
Let it be known. I don't want no confusion. I don't rock. Now that they're like, girl, we don't care, and I don't care that they don't care. But my point is, because they're a panel. I think it's like 3 or 4 black women, and they have this podcast, and they talk, and they're black reformed, but it's weird. And I probably listened to I don't even think I got through 2 episodes.
So we just pulled up the front page, and it says a podcast by black women and for black women. So we're excluded.
And so it was, I heard of them. 2018 was that year where I was learning all this stuff. Reform this, who was that, blah, blah, blah. But Truth's Table, I was like, I'm good. So yeah, the Jude 3 situation, what's the other group? What's the other group? There's a group out of Atlanta. They're based in Atlanta. I think it was
I don't think I'm familiar.
I thought it was like Acts something. But I just stay away from all of that, because they get into the whole race thing. And I saw this with Truth's Table back in, I think, around 2018, when they were talking about the white man, and it just seemed like, but they were talking about reformdom, but they were treating the white man as the gatekeeper of reformdom. Therefore, reformdom is a problem. Therefore, reformdom is not the move. And this was back.
They always do this.
So now seeing how people are now trying to, now just full disclosure, I always say that I don't necessarily identify as reformed, and I don't mean that I don't believe what we call reformed doctrine. I'm not saying that. I just try to stay away from the labels.
The labels, absolutely.
It's too much for me. Like I learned all this stuff in 20. I'm like, I'm just a Christian. That we don't just believe. Like,
that's what I related to. I remember, because I didn't come to Christ till college, and not far after that I went to seminary. And I remember people asking me, now here's the thing. Meanwhile, we grew up in a Reformed Presbyterian church. So I'm familiar with certain terms. I'm familiar with the tulip and all that stuff, but I didn't know what it was because I wasn't paying attention and I was sleeping. So, but when I'm following Christ and people are asking me questions, right, about grace and about atonement and all of the things, I was answering from a biblical perspective and not from a one who knows the Calvinist teaching perspective. Exactly. And so there are things that I agree with and I hear, but I don't really care about being called a Calvinist.
Right. Yeah. Same.
I'm not baptized in his name.
Exactly.
So
and this, well, it's a reform day. I'm like, and I get all that, but I'm just like, thank you, Martin Luther and all of y'all. Thank you. But the grace that was bestowed upon you to do these things is for the sake of the gospel. That so it's just, I don't know. It's just so much. I didn't realize how political It could be as a believer. I just didn't know there was so much going on. So what I try to do on my platform is just let people know, like, look, I'm a Christian, and the truth that I espouse here, either you're gonna rock with it or you don't. Like, I'm not, are you Calvin? I'm not. Look, do you agree or you disagree? You want to have a conversation about it? What, because I feel like once you fall under a particular label, people think they know everything you believe.
Everything about you.
Yeah, everything about you. Like, oh, but I can't talk to you because you think that you don't have the gospel. And it's like, I don't say that.
You got the wrong eschatology.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there's a lot of presuppositions that come with all of that, and I don't like it. And so I just try to stay away. Other than Christian or disciple of Christ, I just keep it pushing. But if people want to know who I am, because it's funny, because tomorrow we're supposed to be doing a discussion on predestination versus free will, and I was like, man, I know a whole lot of quote unquote Calvinists, but I wanted there to be the Armenian perspective, and it's just like trying to find somebody who's been so
is that happening on your podcast or?
So it's going to be, I have this thing called a subscriber engagement. It started when we were during quarantines. So it's kind of like a little small group where those who subscribe to the blog come over and, we go through the Bible over a particular topic. This one was going to be more broad because we were going to have some gentlemen participating, but everybody's just like, we all agree. So I was just like, what kind of conversation is that going to be? We all know, which is good that we agree, but it's like, something's always happening on Instagram. A few weeks ago, where a whole war broke out in the comment section about free will versus predestination. So I was like, all right, everybody, let's just calm down. And let's just move this into like a forum where we can actually hear each other. All the people that were doing all the, I can't rock with y'all Calvinists, blah, blah. Everybody's quiet when I say, well, come on to the show, no one. It's crickets. So, and
that's exactly what we do.
And that's fine, it's okay. But so we're gonna postpone that for now. But we'll see what we can do. But I just pray that those who are getting sucked into that right now would just see the light. And I'm grateful that God is just even with, I don't know where you guys are with the vaccine, so I'm not trying to make this whole thing political, but I love how the Lord just providentially brings things together to open people's eyes over the small things, giving us a way of escape, if you will. Like people were so afraid of COVID and so convinced that they were going to kill their grandma if they, look through her window and all this other stuff without being vaccinated. And, then in December, everybody got COVID.
Everybody got
it. So it's like, all right. So now people are like, oh, no masks, no vaccine, whatever.
We're all inoculated.
But I thank God that, he allowed, the truth comes out. Like, the lie may have a little success for a while, but the truth eventually comes out. But so hopefully something similar will happen with all that's going on with the race baiting and the infighting that's happening with people. I'm not sure if you guys have been paying attention with what's going on with Pastor Mason.
Eric Mason.
What
has he done recently?
He apparently, Jude 3, as a matter of fact, apparently has a documentary coming out, I think in June.
You know what? I saw a clip from that.
Where he's kind of talking about it's hard to find white people in the Bible. You got to look for them.
You got to look for them, but you don't have to look for black people.
Yeah, and before that, he started talking. He did this clip about, you were speaking earlier about doing apologetics in, maybe an urban or black, environment or community or whatnot. And I guess he's trying to do the same thing, but it's like the way it's coming about, it's like kill whitey almost.
Tearing down.
Let me because I don't want to misrepresent what he's saying, and I don't, that's not what I'm getting. But that spirit of just like you said, tearing down. There, and he'll come back and say, I'm not trying to tear you down, but then say something that'll just tear you down, But so those types of things are happening, and I saw that at TGC back in 2018 was that year where I just learned a whole lot of there was good, there was bad. There was people who to listen to, people who to avoid it.
Right.
And they had a women of color gathering at that event where only women of color, but it was actually mostly black women, were invited to this special session to just come together and cry about being black. And I was just like,
yikes.
like, yo, this don't look right to me, you know.
Yeah,
and
that's come on,
something
y'all.
at the
The
event.
church.
Yeah, and they were like, we need to separate from the whole so we can heal the part, and then we can come back
Right.
to it. Like, what? It was
The bearer of the gospel.
Mhm.
The message that says that Jesus took upon his own flesh the
mm,
breaking that broke down the barriers,
Mhm.
the dividing walls of hostility,
Putting them back up.
broken in his flesh
putting them
once
back
and for
up.
all. And we're sitting here trying to fuck them like puzzle pieces.
Yep,
What's this? Racism? Let me put that there. That look like a corner piece.
yeah,
And it's like
and
those realities, they exist in this world, but for the Christian, we are pointing to eternity.
that's
Yeah.
right.
But we want to find home in this futile, finite reality.
Yeah,
Hevel.
yeah.
We're going through Ecclesiastes. Talks about vapor. Okay, we're running out of time, and
Vapor.
you need to spend time with your husband. So I'm going to ask this one question:
Okay.
if you had to write only one more blog,
Mm.
what would that topic be?
I think maybe about how we all need to lay aside every weight that so ensnares us and just get back to what we should be doing as believers, and that's being disciples of Christ, sharing the gospel, making disciples, and living a life that is, that makes our calling and election sure. I think that's really my heart with a lot of things. The meat of what I hope I'm communicating with people is that I just want to cut through all the noise and get back to what we as believers should do. So if that would be a hard thing to do, to be my last blog thing to write. But if my boo came to me today and say, babe, I realize that you're spending too much time and with the blog, you don't spend any time with me. So you may need to take a break. Okay, one last blog post, babe. It would be
that.
Yeah, it would be about that.
It would be that.
It's just so much noise, and it's actually very discouraging, and I have to remember to try to tune it out. It's easy, and that's why I do commend, and I'm grateful for pastors who do exegetical preaching, because it is very tempting to do topical. I'm not saying that it's necessarily wrong to do a topical sermon. I don't think that's the case. But if you're doing that all the time, you can easily
Well, you can look up in 10 years and your congregation doesn't know the Bible.
doesn't know the Bible, and you're distracted. You're all over the place, So
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great ending there, Constance. We appreciate you joining Black and Blurred.
Social media.
Do you have some things that you want to share, or share your social media, or share your blog address one more time for the people?
Sure. So my website is truthandfire.com. It's spelled truth and A-N-D fire.com. But the podcast is found on pretty much every podcast streaming platform: Spotify, Apple, Google Play. And so for that, it's truth +fire. If you're searching for it there. But it's also on the website. And then I also do some writing over at Pyrolithos Foundation. They are relatively new. They just launched at the end of 2021. 501c3 conservative Christian site that just allows myself, and I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of Samuel Say.
I've heard that name before.
Slow to Write. He and I.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we do some writing over there as well. So some of our content will just we cross promote, if you will, our content.
Oh, nice.
At Pyrolithos Foundation as well. And it's also an avenue for those who want to support, because I'm really bad at fundraising. I don't like it. It's just coming from that prosperity gospel background. I just
I hear you.
No confusion. But Pyrolithos Foundation has they support me through that. So for those who would like to support me, they can support Pyrolithos, and then earmark whatever they would like to send my little way, and that's fine. But no pressure. No pressure. So that's where you can find me. Instagram, Verite Ifer, Twitter, Verite Ifer, Facebook, everybody else. I'm not doing it. I'm over it. It's too much.
Well, thank you very much. We are glad that you were able to join us in this episode. We are definitely fighting the same battle as siblings, but then also as postmates. I feel like we're on the same post, warding off the same enemy. So we definitely have to do this again.